Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Moulik, Berkana, the Cultural Affairs Officer at the U.S. Consulate General in Chennai, and I welcome you all to this afternoon's program on coping with the challenges of virtual learning, inclusive education paradigm. This is one of several programs that the Consulate General in Chennai is organizing virtually during this time, and I think you'll find today's program very interesting. We're joined by two resource persons today. Manju Balasubramanyam is an alumna of the Fulbright Distinguished Awards in Teaching program from 2013 to 2014, and she's the principal of Delhi Public Schools North in Bengaluru. We're also joined by Dr. Preethi Mathur, the head of the Department for Counseling and Special Education, also at the Delhi Public School North in Bengaluru. Well, the coronavirus disease 2019, or COVID-19, has really impacted all sectors of life, including education. Students, teachers, administrators, policymakers, and parents have all had to adapt to this unprecedented time. And campuses across the globe are facing a lot of challenges in terms of how they reach their students, whether it's safe to reopen or how to engage students virtually in the meantime. And this is a situation around the world, including in the United States, as well as in India. I myself have two sons who've just finished an online year, one in the United States and one in Indonesia. And I know that that has presented special challenges, but also opportunities for students as they engage in online learning. And I know, again, this is a real challenge to institutions in terms of capacity building and technical know-how, as well as infrastructure. We tend to think that physical campuses offer students a level playing field where all have direct access to the learning process and to the teachers. But sometimes when it comes to e-learning, students don't always have a level playing field, and they're constrained in some cases by personal circumstances or by their backgrounds. So it's very important to be able to impart online learning in an equitable way. And I'm sure our two speakers today have some very interesting thoughts about that. Before I introduce them, I would just like to say that we have the capability to receive your questions. There's a feature where you can enter questions, and after the two speakers' presentations, we'll get to the questions from our viewers and from our listeners today. This is streaming live on Facebook, and we welcome all of you who are tuning into the program. So let me start by introducing our first presenter. Ms. Manju Balasubramanyam, as I mentioned, is the principal of the Delhi Public School, or DPS North Bengaluru, and she is an education management professional and a biology teacher. She is a 2013 Fulbright Distinguished Awards in Teaching Scholar at the College of Education at the University of Maryland. Manju received the prestigious National Teaching Award from the Prime Minister of India in 2018, and she has recently been nominated as an International Executive Council member of the Global Inclusive Education Network. Welcome, Manju. Our second speaker is Dr. Preethi Mathur. She is the head of counseling and special education at the Delhi Public School North in Bengaluru. She has a doctoral degree in psychology and a postgraduate diploma in guidance and counseling and rehabilitation psychology. She has trained many people, principals, teachers, parents, and students in their personal, social, and career growth on the one hand, and she's also trained a wide range of professionals, including police personnel, company secretaries, special needs coordinators of schools, counseling personnel, paralegal workers, NGOs, and many others. Preethi, I welcome you as well. And again, I would encourage all of our listeners and followers to ask some questions, and we will get to those after the presentations. So Manju, let me start with you. Delhi Public School in Bengaluru North, it's a K through 12 inclusive school, and it has a total student population of about 7,000 students. And I'm wondering, Manju, how did you manage the digital divide or bridge the gap in shifting to a new mode of teaching that has multiple boards offering various levels of education? I wonder what were some of the steps that your institution took to adapt to these times? And Manju, I understand that you have a presentation for us. So let me go ahead and turn it over to you. Manju, welcome.
Thank you, Moulik, for that brilliant introduction to both of us. It gives me immense pleasure to be representing two organizations that have groomed me into an inclusive life. Delhi Public School North, Bangalore North, where I work, and Fulbright for giving me the opportunity to train myself and come back and do what I always wanted to do. Coming from the world's second most densely populated country, I'd never seen disability around me. And when I decided to do the Fulbright, I had this option to do it in biology. But as head of school, I wanted to do something that would reach out to more children and more people. And I looked at special ed. And I was asked at the interview, you don't seem to have a background in special ed. How then? And I said, I'll find my way in the United States. And that's what happened. And since then, through my mentors at College Park campus, University of Maryland, the people I met, the schools I visited, and the connections I made with other alumni from the DAT program, we've turned DPS North Bangalore to be one of the most inclusive schools in the country. And I'm to tell my story. We could start with the presentation. Like Moulik said, Delhi Public School, Bangalore North, has about 7,200 students, about 400 plus teachers, 800 support staff, and about 600 of our children are in the special needs segment. We have children from across the spectrum. We are inclusive in the true sense, from gender equity to children with special needs to people from different religions and backgrounds. We are a very inclusive school. I must share at this point that DPS Bangalore North has this distinction of having more number of girls 11 and 12 compared to boys. I think we must be one of the few schools in the country to have that kind of a skewed ratio. The Fulbright is the journey that I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides. The next slide, please. Could we have the next slide, please? The two pictures on this slide tell our story, Preethi's and mine. The picture on the right is that of our head boy, Karan Veeranand, and his teammates with him. The picture is not complete, but this speaks about the inclusive of Delhi Public School, Bangalore North. He, as head boy, he created a post called the Director for the Post of Inclusive Education in the Prefectorial Board. And since then, we've had a child with special needs taking up that point. Karan Veeranand was a student of the school for 15 long years and went on to become the head boy. And today he's studying with a 100% scholarship at one of the top universities in Bangalore. He intends to be a scientist treating his own disease, which is muscular dystrophy. And Karan and his friends, 600 of them, who are the ones who got us the award on the left, the President of India's Award for Inclusive Education. The next slide, please. This is a rough number of students who've been diagnosed and assessed by the Rehabilitation Council of India to have the various disabilities. In addition to them, we have about 200 students who are waiting to be assessed and be given a formal certification for them to get the assessment and accommodations and necessary accommodations that they would need. But you can see that the largest number that we have is on specific learning disabilities. And this is exactly what I'd taken up on my Fulbright program. My Fulbright was to find assistive technology for students with specific learning disabilities in India. And one of the taglines that I learned then and which holds good today, technology. And I was doing something on assistive technology. I learned that all technology is assistive. So what we're doing today in terms of virtual classes learning is helping everybody. And that's that's the perspective we are bringing from the next slide, please. These are some of the best practices that we have as an inclusive school. And Karanveer Anand, our head boy, was in the school 15 years ago. As long as he was walking around, we didn't need to be accessible, and the government of India at that time did not have any requirement for campuses to be accessible. But as he stopped moving around, we restrained him to one floor so that he didn't have to climb stairs. But then he said, I don't want to be. I want to be with all my friends in other classes. So built ramps and we got in escalators. When it was time for him to move on to a wheelchair, he said, no, I don't want to go on to a wheelchair. Keep me, give me something more. And I said, what can we give you? And he said, you can give me railings along the wall, and I will hold that and walk around. And then we brought in, washrooms that were accessible for him, and the whole story turned. And what was done for Karan became a practice for everybody else. That's where I come, when I talk about inclusion, it is all about interdependence. It's not about making someone dependent on someone or making someone independent. It is about interdependence. All other practices are very similar to most schools that have inclusive practices, that is classroom modification, restructuring of the curriculum. And at this point, I'd like to say that DPS Bangalore North has taken up both formal and non-formal boards. So while we have CBSE as a formal board, we have the National Institute of Open Schooling, which is the world's largest open schooling platform, as one of our means of educating children. The flexibility of the NIOS enables children with special needs to cope with pressures that are generally associated with academics in India. We allow parent involvement to a very large extent. We believe that parents with children with special needs need to be involved in the schoolwork. So we encourage parents to be shadow teachers or to come along with them. Involvement in all activities. We allow for peer sensitization programs. And if we are able to run the school with 1/10 of our population being children with special needs, the credit goes entirely to my students. For their empathy is what keeps the flag high. I haven't had a single child go back home and say that my friend, bites me or my friend throws my tiffin box away. It's just that my friend is different and he or she is my friend. Teachers, amazing set of teachers who have made my dream come true. I can dream of an inclusive school, but they make it happen in their classrooms every day. And in India, every class has about 40 students. And in those 40, if you have 5 with special needs, specifically hidden disabilities, it takes a lot. It takes a lot. So teacher training, and counseling of parents. Parents have moved from different cities across the country to come to the school. And I respect their faith that they moved jobs and families just to come to a school where their child would be accepted. We work extremely well with the bodies around Bangalore which deal with special education, special needs. 3 institutions that I would like to acknowledge today are Spastic Society of Karnataka, Bangalore, Mrs. Rukmini Krishnaswamy, who's been my mentor, Babel Center for Autism, and Drishti, who does our assessments, and NIOS, Mr. Satish, the regional director, who stood by us all through the way. Next slide, please. Corona came in like a big Hollywood blockbuster. Life came to a grinding halt. We'd been hearing about what was happening in China, and before we knew, we were told you must shut down schools. And I think it hit all of us all of a sudden, and what happened in the world happened in India and in Bangalore as well. The next slide, please. The next slide, please. India was one of the countries with the hardest and the harshest lockdowns. We're still in a lockdown. We are in lockdown 5.0 and unlock 1.0. But the schools were the first to shut and they've yet not reopened. It was majorly disruptive for schools. Our end of year examinations, which happened in March and April, had to come to an end. We had no idea about what was going to happen to children in high-stake examinations. Some of them got over and some of them were pending. They're scheduled to be happening somewhere between the 1st and 17th of July, but the number of cases are rising. We still do not know what's happening, but it was majorly disruptive. But then I think the most positive people on this planet are teachers. And teachers who've always had a little hesitation towards technology because of the fear that will technology replace me or will technology overtake me was all brushed aside, all put aside, and teachers jumped on to the bandwagon of virtual learning. The next slide, please. The government of India stepped in and said, we will reduce this curriculum by 30%. The Ministry for Human Resource and Development, the boards, everybody got on together and said, online teaching workshops will be conducted for teachers across the country. The talk about the new normal, pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID was being spoken about. ICT and blended learning was the buzzword. Differentiated instruction, which is the benefit of technology, was being addressed. The CBSE board came up with an idea saying, we have no idea how this year is going to span out and how long it's going to be. And on the virtual platform, how do you assess children subjectively? And so they came up with project-based learning and art integration into the curriculum that would enable children not to go with a pen and paper summative examination, but more of collaborative learning that can happen online. A lot of ideas are being given in every day, recommendations are being taken. But while that was happening at the government level, the next slide will tell you what schools started doing in their own space. The next slide, please. And it's always we shall overcome. The next slide, please. So we just had a week before we started online classes after the first lockdown was announced. And luckily we are the Silicon Valley of India. So N number of IT companies out here, all willing, and many of them were parents with us. So whether it was Zoom, Microsoft, or Google, Skype, we started training ourselves onto every platform. And we did that. Everyone said for some time it's going to be free. So we said we're not losing this opportunity. So the IT department in the school, the computer science department, and I must give credit to my head of department, Uzma, and her team for training us non-stop. They would be training us, and we have 400 teachers. And imagine 400 teachers training from one platform to another. So we would do so one group of teachers would get trained and they would micro-train the next team and the next team. And within 1 week, we were all set to take our classes. And here I must say that our students turned out to be our biggest teachers. We were using a platform that was theirs. They knew the ins and outs of it. So while in the beginning, they tested us out, they played all the pranks that most kids would do, but they also started teaching us. So offline, they would, like on the chat box today, they would say, ma'am, this is what you do to stop someone from annotating. But all teachers, they attended webinars, they took on online classes, they were taking care of their families. I think a 24-hour day wasn't sufficient for any one of us. And we started our online practices. Next slide, please. We used all the platforms that I'd mentioned earlier. And with each of them, we had issues, like most people do. We had security issues. We had children sharing their links. And the management chipped in at this point and said, let's use our learning management software as a platform. And so they came up with what we call as Entra, with heightened security features, because this was accessible only to us and to our 7,000 children. The next slide, please. This is a quote, and I'll let you all read it. But while you're reading it, one of the best things that happened was COVID gave us time to embrace technology. It really did. And it gave us time to embrace technology with support. Because while we were all at home, we had our kids, our children, or our spouses with us, or families who were better at technology than us. And so that was one way of learning for teachers. For students, this was the best time as well, because every time we tried flipped classrooms or other techniques of virtual learning, parents always said, I don't know what they do after 10 in the night. We are dead tired. And they say they're doing schoolwork, but nothing really is happening. And at this time, they were sitting and we had parental supervision, students and parents sitting and learning together. And that made it so much easier and so much more meaningful. The next slide, please. So I've already spoken about this. We had all these issues that most schools who went into virtual learning faced, but our key was always about handling issues of anxiety, stress, depression during one of the world's toughest lockdowns. My grandmother is 95, and she says she hasn't seen anything like this in her lifetime. So I am not sure. So we really realized that this is going to be trouble. And that's where Preethi and her team chipped in, and we've been very lucky to have them around for us to share our problems and troubles. The next slide, please. So that's Entra, our own virtual learning platform. The next, please. While Corona disrupted everybody, it has been most difficult for families with children with special needs. Their lives came to an abrupt halt because their children needed more than schooling. In the next few slides, we're going to talk about what we did and how we did that. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So our first thing was to reach out to them without making them extremely conscious or aware. So we said we'll do a survey with a small group of 30. And we did this in mid-March. And when we did the survey, we found that there was an absolute breakdown in schedule. Kids were waking up at different times. They didn't want to, get into a practice to sit with their books. There were high levels of anxiety, both for children and parents. Therapies had come to an end. They were in no touch with their therapists. Parents were unable to manage their words. And for many kids for whom schools become a space for social interactions, this had stopped. So all that they had learned till March had come to an end. They were not meeting anyone other than their parents. Even family members had stopped coming. Domestic help had stopped coming. And so there was complete isolation. And this was affecting everybody. The next slide, please. The special education department at DPS Bangalore North immediately created WhatsApp groups with interested parents. They shared their intent behind creating the group, took their consent in, and started skill building individually. They looked at every child specifically and catered to her or his needs. Parents were asked to help their children complete the task and upload the work or upload the video. And this also became a support group for parents. So in every grade, we had a WhatsApp group and all the parents were together. So if the teacher, the special educator put up one activity, parents were so enthused to do something more. There were 5 activities by the evening. And so there was so much more information that was coming that kids could do. The special educator and the therapist would evaluate and give necessary feedback. And we started meeting. We generally have only 2 parent-teacher meetings scheduled for the year. And here we started doing that as and when they're required. One per week for certain, and then as many times a parent would require. And again, I'd like to thank Preethi, Mathur and her team for giving their days and nights to us. Thank you. The next slide, please. There were a number of parents who didn't respond. So we started making personal calls and asking them if, we could assist in any particular way. And then resources were shared with them on a platform that was comfortable to them. The next slide, please. Somewhere towards the end of March, Preethi called me and said, I know a lot of people need us. Can we start teleservicing? Can we share our numbers on the school's portal? And can we ask parents and all stakeholders to come and speak to us should they need any help? It was such a hit. And I think the first people to run were students and teachers and said, I've had enough of my family with me for the whole day. I need help. I need to talk to someone else. And to other issues that were to do with, other mental health issues. We started posting articles on our school website and on the learning management platform. And we asked parents to share it extensively with whomever they did. And grade appropriate competitions during the lockdown were announced, and e-certificates were given to students to participate in and enjoy themselves. The next slide, please. We've actually celebrated the 3 months so far. It's been such a huge learning for all of us as a teaching community, as families. Schools run on trust and faith. And I think we've been very, very lucky to have an extremely supportive management and very understanding parents who have, provided the necessary support for us to go through these times. For some of my children with specific learning disabilities, learning with technology is way better than learning in the classroom. Flipped and blended learning enabled children to learn at their own pace because they could see teachers' recorded content. And so that was, you could go through that again and again. And I do understand that reports say that blended learning has improved learning by around 40 to 50%. Parental support was huge. So, if there was an issue, we could get back on the phone with the parents and say, could you take care and could you see that this isn't done tomorrow? For children with autism and children who had auditory processing issues, wearing the headphone or the earphone absolutely removed the ambient sounds, and that was very comfortable as well. Even for children like we are doing today, this one-on-one interaction with the teacher, many kids felt that she was directly talking to them. We ensured that between every online class of about 40 minutes, we have 10 minutes in between. We had guided meditation to start with. That's a regular practice in school. We continued that with our online classes. I had a lot of kids coming back and telling me that we have so much more time. We don't have to travel so many hours to school. We beat the traffic. We have 3 hours of classes, and the rest of the afternoon and the evening is us time. And so I think they were sleeping better, they were more rested, and they came up with innovative projects. In fact, some of my students in grade 12 have been working with 1 million and 1 million for 1 billion on various projects that they plan to take to the United Nations later this year. So kids have been very active and they've used the virtual platform extensively, and we've been doing some really good work. The next slide, please. We realize more than ever that it takes everybody, including technology, to raise children. Thank you.
Well, Manju, thank you very much for that presentation. That was very inspiring, and I salute your efforts at inclusivity. And also how quickly your institution adapted. You mentioned you just had a week from the notice of the lockdown to switch everything online, and how you're using different platforms and engaging with the parents and bringing everybody up to speed so that you're able to reach all of your students and meet them at their level. That's very inspiring. Great work. So let me turn now to our second guest. Preethi, good afternoon. I think I know the answer to this question. Manju was speaking about some of the challenges students are facing. But I'm just wondering, Preethi, in all of your years as a counselor and a special educator, have you ever come across such a situation, a unique situation that we're facing now, where there's such a total and sudden shift in teaching methods and platforms, where everything has gone online at the same time? So Preethi, I'd like to turn it over to you for your remarks. Go ahead, Preethi.
Thank you, Maulik. And I want to say thank you to Manju ma'am to giving me opportunity to talk about what we are doing for children with a special need. And definitely, I will answer your question first, Maulik. No, in my career of 22 years, I had never faced such situation. But I think this opportunity is given to me to explore more and more. And I am blessed to have a very good team of counselors and special educators, occupational therapists, and definitely good teachers and a motivator principal like Manju ma'am, who guided us and helped us in planning something for children with special need at this moment of time. As Manju ma'am told that we offered a virtual platform for learning to all the students, and nowadays in under supervision of parents, all the students are learning different things. I want to tell you that our children with special need are also attending the same classes with the teachers, and they are the teachers and the peers are helping them to clear their queries. And our children are very happy because sometimes in school they are missing some connect because of their own personalities, they were missing that connect. But during this virtual, using this virtual platform, we're very happy that everyone is attending them. And the best part is that my SEN team is also helping them with the guided learning program, and we are sharing videos and activities which are very much related to their growth and overall development. So they are very happy to get connected with all the teachers and all the peers through virtual, because sometimes in offline classes they miss that somewhere. So I think it is an opportunity for those kids and parents to get connected. In guided learning program, what we did, we called all the parents, and we tried to find out what they need actually. Because this is the time when children are not going for their therapies outside. The no support is from the school side, like classes and everything. So we are talking to parents on one-on-one basis and trying to figure out where they need support. Some parents need support with regards to the therapies and other things. So my team is working for that. Our occupational therapist shared some very good activities of fine motor, gross motor, and executive functioning activities to the parents. And parents are working on that, making videos and sharing with us for evaluation. And we are telling them where they have to rectify the activity. Because as a professional, I think occupational therapist can guide them very well. Even the special educators are sharing the academic things and activities for their reading, writing, and spellings. And so parents are very happy to learn those new activities, and they are also coming up with new ideas. Children with autism and ADHD, they are having different issues. So for them, various sensory activities are shared by my team, and I am blessed that the parents are understanding and helping us in creating more activities. We have shared one or two activities for one skill, and they are sharing more activities and videos with us, which are actually bringing the resources up for us. And we are collecting it, and I am sure it will be a resource for others also. So I think I am blessed to have a wonderful team and various motivators who are helping us. Uh, Adding to that, when we are talking to parents, sometimes we feel that even parents need support because they are working from home, and they need support in terms of some of them lost their jobs also. So at this moment, we are trying to provide them telecounseling and provide that socio-emotional support to them. And if they need, my teammates are working on career counseling also. We are providing them career support also through telecounseling. And on regular basis, we are interacting with them, and we are getting very good feedback. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Okay, Preethi, well, thank you. I know you're fulfilling a very important role in the school, and I'm glad that so many people are taking advantage of the services. Do you find, Preethi, that are you busier than normal right now, or is Are the amount of people coming to you for services, is it about the same as before COVID, or do you find right now you're much busier? How is it for you?
I think nowadays we are much busier. Previously, we were working for 8 to 4 for the school and 1 or 2 more hours for that school. But nowadays, we are online from 8 o'clock to evening 8 o'clock. And after that, also, we are getting calls. So I think we are much busier than before. But we are enjoying because we are doing whatever we want to do, actually. So we are happy and we are enjoying our work at this moment.
Okay, well, Preethi, thanks again for your presentation. And thank you both. It's now time in our program to turn to questions from our audience. I think we have a couple questions here. Let me take a look. There's a question from, let's see. There was a question on WhatsApp groups and being able to reach students on WhatsApp. Yeah, this is a question from Asha Rani. She's asking about the role of WhatsApp groups in reaching students, even in government schools. So if you have thoughts on that, either one of you, please go ahead and take that.
Can I?
Please.
We have created a WhatsApp group with the parents with their consent only. When we have a list of all the parents and we send a consent form for the parents, and once the parents send that consent form, filled consent form, we created that groups, and with those groups we are interacting with them on regular basis. We are sending activities and worksheet through WhatsApp group, especially when we are talking about special need kids. For other kids, we are using the virtual platform created by school, that is Intrar, and I think Manju ma'am will be the right person to talk about Intrar more. Over to you, Manju ma'am.
Thank you, Preethi. Asha Rani ji, WhatsApp is a wonderful tool to be used by children in government schools, because in the far outreaches of India, mobiles do work. And almost every kid today or every family has a mobile device. And there is pretty good connectivity. And we've used WhatsApp as a learning platform in our earlier days. Schools in Karnataka do not allow us to have children have mobiles in classrooms. But it is a fantastic tool because, again, you can learn at your own pace. You have enough number of students who can attend your classes. Teachers can post content. Students can post evaluation worksheets and assessments. It's a fabulous tool. So if you're using it or you would like to use it, please go for it for government schools. It's a very economically viable option.
Okay, thank you both. We have a question from Pratibha Bairagi. She's asking about the role of online classes for young learners, especially those grades 1 through 5. And she's talking about alternative methods to reach this age group.
Preethi, would you like to go first? Okay. Ms. Bairagi, at DPS North, we took a conscious decision of not doing online classes from kindergarten to grade 3. Our online classes were available only from grade 4 onwards, upwards. And the number of hours that we had kids coming online was staggered. So a 4th standard kid would come for about 2 hours, and a senior school kid would come for 3.5 hours. Now, how soon do you get in? All people who work with psychiatrists and psychologists say that below the age of 2, children shouldn't have screen time at all. And thereafter, 1 hour of screen time is allowed, is what NIMHANS, the institute in Bangalore, says as well. Now, what we had thought of, now the government of Karnataka has said that there will be no online classes or offline classes till grade 5, but we had recorded content that our teachers had made, and we had tremendous appreciation from the parents saying that the kindergarten kids loved seeing their teacher for about 10 minutes every day. They just wanted to see her and, listen to her voice and see her smile. They didn't want any learning to happen, but that was so important for them. So I think there is a limit that we can have and we should have. But I also understand that in many countries across the world, television is being used as a medium. for early childhood, and the radio as well. But I think some level, because even if we don't, today's kids will go on to, a screen for something or the other. And I think a lot of parents told me when we had to stop our online classes for primary, saying that the kids are anyways on screen for about 4 hours a day, watching Cartoon Network or something else.
Okay, thank you, Manju. There's a couple related questions directed to Dr. Preethi. One is in general, how do we make online learning more engaging and inspiring? And then specifically for Dr. Preethi, how do we sustain the interest of children with attention deficit disorder or who maybe have autism? So let's go to Preethi to address that question, please. Preethi, are you there? Okay, I don't hear Preethi. Manju, do you have thoughts on that question about making online learning more engaging, or especially for children with special needs?
Yes. One of the things that I think makes learning engaging for all learners is bringing humor into the classroom. Allow for children to laugh, and if they cannot move around, give them some activity that they can do around the place. And in our virtual classrooms, the teacher doesn't come and start her classes. They welcome one another, they ask how they're doing and what's happening in their homes. And we've included in between the curricular subjects, we have a little bit of physical education where they can do exercises with their parents, they can do aerobics, they can dance, they can sing, they can do a lot of that, to break the monotony of going from one curricular subject to another. Also, we were very clear that at this point in time, we were not looking at assessments. We didn't want children to be burdened with the addition of assessments. This is going to be a very different year. And so we said we look at assessments later on, but we will see how we can keep learning on. So one of the things we did was bring humor. We integrated art and music and dance into our curriculum. So even when we taught subjects, we were trying to connect things with other ideas, and we would ask children that, which documentary do you think you can relate this with, or what else can you do? So we did a lot of things that would keep kids interested, rather than saying, open your textbook and look at my screen and do what you're doing. Preethi ma'am, are you able to hear us now? I think once she comes back, she will address the second part for children with special needs. But like I said earlier, having earphones enable children with auditory problems to engage with their learning. Having less clutter of the classroom enable children with autism, because they didn't see too much of charts on the walls and colors and specs. So it was kind of comfortable. There was less noise. There was no disruption. People weren't moving around, or there was not chatter around. So that made things easier for children. And we said we were very particular about the time. We didn't exceed any class beyond 40 minutes, and of which about 30 minutes would be teaching time.
Okay, thank you, Manju. We have a couple related questions about stress management, both for teachers and for parents. Maintaining work-life balance, especially for teachers who might be doing more than they're used to doing. Okay, I see that Preethi is back.
Hello.
We're just fielding a question, Preethi, about work-life balance and handling stress, both for teachers and parents. So if either of you have thoughts on that, please go ahead and address those. Manju, do you have thoughts on that to start with, about work-life balance and handling stress?
Work-life balance was one of our biggest concerns, but luckily we come from a city where traveling is quite a chaos. It's a disaster driving in Bangalore. So it cut down our travel time majorly. We could, get on with our work as soon as we were ready, and in 3 or 3.5 hours, and in those 3.5 hours, a teacher would take about 2 hours of classes every day. So she had a lot more time. And like I said, we were very supportive of one another. So if a particular teacher was good at making content, she went and made content. If there was a particular teacher who was better at presenting, she took on that role. So in the initial stages, we did what everyone could, whatever their strengths were. And then we supported one another. So even when we were doing a Zoom session, we had another teacher to take in the queries from the same subject. So a teacher was not burdened if she was presenting, she was just presenting, and someone else was sharing things with her. So yes, it has been because most of us are women and we've had families back home, or we've had families scattered across the globe, and we've been worried and anxious. But again, a large supportive team where one can talk to one another is what Preethi and her team offer us. So we are in a position to talk to them, and then we realize that we're not alone. You know, it's everybody's facing that. And I think those minutes or those times in between when we can talk to people has what has helped all of us. We still, work-life balance is never perfect. It's never perfect, but we learn every day to get better.
Okay, Manju, good. Those are some good tips about work-life balance. I know it's a challenge. What I found was that a lot of parents took extra responsibility while their students were studying at home. So that actually, was a challenge to the parents, in addition to the regular duties, to also address, help with their students learning online.
And sharing devices.
Sharing devices too, exactly. Yeah. Preethi, are you there? Can you hear us? Okay. There seems to be some technical difficulty there, unfortunately. But Manju, while we're waiting for Preethi, I wanted to ask you, Manju, you did a Fulbright program in the United States, correct?
Right.
And I think that was back in 2013 to 2014 in Maryland. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your Fulbright experience, talk a little bit more about that, your time in the United States, and perhaps how you applied what you learned back in India.
This is something I'd really love to share with, and I would wish every single teacher who's passionate about her job as a teacher to apply for the Fulbright program in whatever capacity, in whichever program that is available. I had a mentor in Vasanthi Tyagarajan, who was a Fulbrighter before me. And when the forms came in, she said, Manju, you're going to apply. And I had a week's time. And she said, you write your abstract, send it to me, and I want you in there. I wrote it, and I landed up at the interview table in Delhi. And again, they were very skeptical of me doing something that I'd never done before. But they were very supportive of me because I'd done enough homework. I had already made connections with organizations in the United States which were working with children with special needs through my contacts in India, with the organizations that we work as a school with. When I landed up in Washington, D.C., and I said, I want to look at schools that have children with physical disabilities, video, audio, hearing disability, SLD, and they said, sorry, you can't do everything. You have 4 months. You decide, you choose what you want to do. And I listened to them, but I said, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I had the most magnificent mentor in Professor Peter Leone from the Department of Education, University of Maryland. I got to audit one of his classes, which was on disability studies. I learned from him that you don't need a textbook to teach. You could teach with a video, and you could teach with a movie. You could teach from a storybook. And I also had the pleasure of conducting 2 classes on disability in India, a perspective. I also got to visit juvenile prisons because he used to work with children in juvenile prisons and what they would do and how learning was happening with them. I also met a wonderful person in Dr. Sarah Whelan, who connected me to innumerable people. It was kind of magical. I would step into a bus and the person sitting next to me would be doing something with special ed. I would take a flight to another place, and the person who would be at the airport with me was carrying equipment for children with special needs. It just meant that I was to be there to be learning, and I just absorbed everything. And one of our mentors there said, you've not come here to sleep. Go back to India and you can sleep all that you want. And I did that. I worked all 24 hours. And I'm so glad that every connect of mine, I had the honor of being in Gallaudet for a whole day. And for that first time, I realized what it is to be disabled, because I was the only verbal person and everyone around me was signing. And one of the kids told me that disability is in your mind. We don't think of ourselves as disabled. We think of ourselves as a linguistic minority. And I think these are things that have stayed with me. And I came back to the school, and my management just let me unleash everything that I learned. And we took the school from there to where it is today. We offer sign language as a subject, as a third language. We offer Braille as a third language. We hope that in 2025, we will have children who are visually impaired and hearing impaired, who are deaf and blind. We have now impaired, but we're looking at deaf and blind children in the school, and children will have friends who can sign and Braille with them.
Okay, that's great, Manju. Very inspiring. Nice to hear your stories about America. Okay, well, before we go back to Preethi, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Fulbright program, just to promote that. As Manju mentioned, there's great opportunities with the Fulbright program for school teachers, research scholars, faculty and professionals to visit the United States as part of several Fulbright fellowships, including the Fulbright Narrow Fellowship. These fellowships are administered by the United States India Educational Foundation. There are offices throughout India, including in Chennai. And I'll share with you their website. It's www.usief.org.in. Again, www.usief, as in United States India Educational Foundation, usief.org.in. And they can give you additional information about these Fulbright opportunities. So we have about a little bit less than 10 minutes to go. Preethi, are you back with us? Can you hear me, Preethi?
Yeah, yes, I am.
Okay, very good. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Preethi, there were some questions about how to make technology more engaging for students, and especially students with disabilities. And I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. I'll turn it over to you now.
Yeah, definitely. For example, if we are using technology, what we are doing is, for example, a child is having difficulty with writing. So we have suggested some activities which are related to in which technology is used. Actually, one strategy was karaoke writing, where parent can play karaoke music and child has to write n number of the words he can identify from the music and write them. So that will help them in developing their musical intelligence also, as well as their writing and writing skills, their attention and comprehension. So we are using one technology to address many skills actually. Similarly, for example, for reading, we have shared some activities like eco-reading. So the parent has to read one line and child has to repeat that, like that. Even for a child who is non-verbal, autistic child, we suggested parents to use a reading book for especially the talking books actually, to help the child to develop the speaking skills. Although the child is non-verbal, but now she started at least uttering some words with the help of those talking books. So I think technology is really going to help kids with a different need. The only thing is we have to identify what the child need actually. And accordingly, we have to customize the assistive devices.
Okay, good. Thank you, Preethi. Yeah, that makes sense. You have to adapt according to the situation of each child, the needs of each child. We had a few questions about visas, and I know that right now there's a lot of question or debate about when campuses around the world will reopen. I would just encourage all of our viewers and listeners to keep following our social media, our Facebook and Twitter, and we will update our viewers and our followers about the latest information, whether it's about visas or other information. So there's a lot of uncertainty, frankly, about the situation. And I know campuses here in the United States are, making plans to reopen, but it's really different for each campus. So I would just encourage people who are interested about visas both to reach out to the institution in the US, as well as to follow our social media to find out the latest information. Well, I'll go ahead and bring this question and answer session to a close. We got to most of the questions. It was a very interesting session, I think. Go back to both of you for final thoughts on this. Manju, let's start with you. Maybe just a couple minutes of wrap up what you think, some final words for us today.
I'd just like to say that, COVID presented the most exciting and challenging times for us as teachers to unlearn and relearn. And to learn, we've always said that, teachers should be facilitators and co-learners with their students. This was the time. We learned with them. We learned with them every day. We continue to learn. And we learn just not from one another, but from our colleagues across the world. So we are, and again, that's where the Fulbright experience connects me to teachers across the world. So I have my cohort, people from my cohort in Finland, in Argentina, in Morocco, and in Singapore. And so we are constantly looking at each other, and I'm learning from Singapore because some were very similar. So there is a lot of input, and we learn and we share. And I think it's, while you say stay safe and stay healthy during COVID times, keep learning in COVID times.
Thanks, Manju. And I'm so happy to hear you're still in touch with your Fulbright cohort around the world, and that you can compare notes and take inspiration from your fellow Fulbright scholars around the world. That's great. Okay, yeah, we have just a few minutes left. Preethi, why don't we go to you for any final remarks or wrap up?
Sure. I want to say we believe, in DPS, we believe that it needs village to raise a child. And so during this new normal condition, we, the professional working in the field of disability, teachers and parents has joined hands to make our children engaged in some productive learning, and have the support, and we have supported them for the overall development. So I think if there is will, there is a way. So I think if we have to work for something, I think we have to find out some ways. And if there is will, there is a way. So thank you for that.
Okay, well, Preethi, thank you for that. So yeah, we're just about wrapping up here. I'll go ahead and repeat that website address for the United States India Educational Foundation. That's www.usief.org.in if you're interested in Fulbright opportunities. And I want to take this opportunity to thank both of our speakers today, Manju Balasubramanyam and Dr. Preethi Mathur, both from Delhi Public School North in Bengaluru. I think today was a very interesting session. Certainly we're all challenged in different ways by the prevailing conditions of the COVID-19, but I think you heard examples today about how an educational institution is making the best of it, and how they've used technology to positively adapt and to make things better to be able to reach the students in spite of these challenging times. So I would just conclude by saying thank you all to our viewers and followers today who tuned in, and please tune in again. We have these regular programs through the American Consulate, through our public diplomacy programs, and through the United States India Educational Foundation. We have weekly virtual programs where we engage with audiences throughout South India and around the world. So once again, thank you for joining us today, and I'll sign off and see you next time. Thank you.